Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my Author's Answer video for August 2026. The Author's Answer series was started by J.D. Archer and his writing group. For a while, they would convene on his blog to ask and answer themselves a bunch of reading and writing questions. This went on for, I think, a few years, pretty regularly, once a week. And then JD took a bunch of these questions and answers and brought them to his AuthorTube page. So I'll link to all that information down below, as well as my own AuthorTube playlist, which is predominantly me answering these questions as well. I've been going at this for several years. There's about 150 questions in all, and I've been answering sequentially one per month. And this month's question is a reminder that, I'm off keel with where they were. They were really doing this about a decade ago. I'm answering question 113, which in its unaltered form is, looking back on 2016, how was your year in terms of writing? So I believe they asked this in late December of 2016, and I, of course, am answering it in August of all times in 2026. Although I find ways to kind of fudge these questions when I have to. And in fact, it was about a year ago at this time that I finished a rough draft, my first official, complete rough draft of my fantasy novel. It was a long process in part because I didn't go straight through it. I did a lot of back and forth as I was going along. But last August, I wrote finale on the final chapter, and boy, do I have a lot of work left still to do, but I actually did just post a blog entry. I'll link to both of them down below, where I'm checking in on my progress of the last year. I feel a little iffy about it. I still feel like I'm moving a little slowly, in part because I'm also, I also decided to start a short story as well, so what do you know? And I do a bunch of other stuff too. I, am reading and doing booktube and writing book reviews and writing blogs and what have you. But I'm gonna rein it back in now. And I didn't talk in a whole lot of detail in the blog post about the specifics of the story. I talked a little bit about my attempts at outlining and structure, and I find those to be a little difficult. The thing that really grounds me is that I've had critique groups. Particularly, I'm a member of a really grassroots, wonderful organization, the DC Writers Salon, and one of the things it offers is a science fiction and fantasy critique group. We meet monthly, and most of the months I've been able to submit a chapter, and I've gotten really thoughtful feedback, and I think well, I'll just say I've, since last August, I've finally reaching the end of Act 1, I think. Sometimes I've gone back and rewritten and resubmitted chapters, but I think now I am finally at the end of my Act 1, which I've spruced up pretty significantly. One of the main things, I had to do, or that I was very encouraged to do, is to continue to give my main character more agency. And that comes into effect, well, I'll explain that this is a Jewish-inspired YA epic fantasy novel about a girl who convenes with a goddess and kind of becomes a prophet in her own right, and enters into socio-political realities of her homeland. And this requires in the beginning that she had to go into this dark forest away from her homeland. And in the first draft, I kind of was just dancing around it because I probably get too stuck in the idea that I can't be too direct about things. Like, that's not artsy enough. And now I'm trying my best to find that balance between not being, completely, facile in my writing. I still want it to be art, but at the same time, I, want to be a bit more direct in what I'm doing. So one of those easy things is that the call for action to action, where she enters the forest, had to be much more on her shoulders. So I did a lot more of that, where it was a much more purposeful thing, where this goddess was using birdsong to call out to her, and she was very deliberately and intentionally taking the step to answer, even though it doesn't, exactly go the way she intends or thinks it will, or, all of that stuff. But that's a major part of what I did. There's other parts of Act 1 too, where she is living in the forest with a bunch of boys, and I knew for a while that it's very inspired by my interest in Peter Pan, and particularly dark retellings of Peter Pan. I also can't help but think that it has a little bit of Lord of the Flies in it, which is reminding me, I actually just watched the new Netflix BBC adaptation just recently. I think it's been on Netflix in the US for a few months now. And so I'm broiling with thoughts about that. Maybe less to do with my novel, but I, another thing I would like to do is review that. But see, yeah, I got a lot on my plate. But yeah, it's going slow, but I think that the feedback has just been really the most helpful thing to me, even when it sometimes feels like you're being stabbed to death and then have to put yourself back together chapter by chapter. It's been a little bit different with the short story. I started a science fiction short story in January. It was supposed to be a brief reprieve, but I should have known myself better to realize that even when it comes to short stories, I just don't write that quickly. And I am still going at it. I think I'm finally to the point where I'm hoping within the next couple of weeks I'll have a definitive first draft, because I have another beta reading group I would like to send it to. But this one's a little more complicated in other ways. I didn't get into it on my blog post, but it is heavily inspired by October 7th, and my first idea was to talk about trauma and about how overwhelming sort of the toxicity of social media and the constant barrage of it is around this topic. But I don't really think it fit with the characters in the actual story I was telling, which are very directly involved with the trauma. I mean, I'm, interacting with October 7th from across the ocean. I, have members of my Jewish community who were impacted, who were killed and taken hostage, but I am a couple of steps removed from them, whereas in my story, my main character is very directly related to these people, and in particular to one hostage. So I feel like I've had to shift things around a little bit and not be quite so distant from it, I suppose. Like, I couldn't have her be as distant and sort of numb in the way that I was numb for so long. She'd have to be different. And I have shared parts of it with the DC Writer Salon, and it's a very different experience. It's been a very different experience sharing that story with the group because I think there's just so much contention around the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, around October 7th, around the devastation in Gaza. And I feel like some of the feedback I've gotten definitely relies more heavily on biases than I would like. But I do know, too, that, it's not like my writing is perfect, and I just sort of need to find a balance somewhere. But it's definitely, it's been probably my most challenging experience sharing the story with that group. So we'll see how it goes with another group. I'll be able to share the whole thing with them at least. It's a relatively long short story. It's about 6,000, 7,000 words. So yeah, that's where I am basically. That's what my creative writing has entailed for the last year. And so yeah, I guess that about wraps it up for me now. Again, I'll leave links to the blog posts I've written about my writing progress this August and last August, and other information about the Author's Answer series, which it is very fun that I can still answer these questions even when fudging them a little bit years and years later. But expect me back on this channel within the next couple of days to return to the booktube aspect of things with my final AM reading video for August. Another thing I have to definitely prep for. Stay tuned. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone. Keep writing, and I'll see you next time.